Welcome back to MyTutor and welcome back to the online school and welcome back to English. So today we're carrying on with what we looked at on Tuesday. So on Tuesday we looked at the GCSE English Language paper 2 question 2. So we're going to be continuing on in a similar vein. So we'll be looking at a 19th century text and a 21st century text. So we looked at two nursing texts last session. So we looked at Florence Nightingale and we looked at an article that spoke about the role of nurses in World War II, but was written in the 21st century for a nurses organisation website. So today we're looking at two Christmas texts, which I think are really interesting, and the 19th century text I think is quite funny, but that might just be me. So that's what we are going to be up to today. So if you guys don't know me, my name's Vicki. I studied English language and linguistics, trained as a teacher last year, done over 350 lessons with my tutor. Running the sessions sort of as usual, so if you guys have any questions, pop them in the chat or the Q&A. I tend to look at the chat more because it seems to be the more popular one. If you've got any questions regarding my tutor, whether that be private tuition or what's going on with the online school, then please do shout out as well. Bolla's going to be with us for the first few minutes of the session, and then she'll pop back towards the end to answer any of the my tutor side questions. If you've got any questions about English and sort of either what we're going to be doing in future, or what is you need more advice, you need more help with something that we've already covered, please throw those questions up to me. If it's a slightly bigger question or a recap question, I tend to sort of pop those ones towards the end where we have that little bit extra time. So we'll do 45 minutes teaching, 15 minutes questions, but usually we sort of do quizzes within that time. Right, so a couple of you have popped up already. That's fine if you weren't here last lesson. You can always look them up on YouTube, so you can catch up that way if you did miss. And I'm not sure about chemistry today, so I will check with Bolla towards the end of the session. Right, we'll answer both of those MyTutor questions towards the end in the Q&A section. Right, so we're going to be continuing with looking at implicit and explicit information. What we can say about the texts, remembering it's an only 8 marker and it's a lot of legwork for not a huge amount of marks. It's the lowest marker apart from the 4 marker, which is question 1, which is a tick box true or false exercise. So it's definitely much more work. I think it's probably the hardest question across the papers because you've got so much to look at for such a small amount of time within your exam due to how it's weighted. So I'm going to sort of be giving you tips, hints on how you can come up with sort of a mental plan as you go through, so you don't have to really think. So last time I used sort of a statement and we sort of ticked whether it was the 19th century text, the 21st century text, or both of them. This time I'm going to be doing Venn diagrams, which I did with the question 4 as well, because that's a comparison question. But this is more implicitly, and this is looking at implicit and explicit information, subjective and objective to an extent as well, so stuff we've already been looking at. So I'm going to sort of show you the long route, which is doing a Venn diagram, which is what you would do if you had loads of time in the world. And then I'm going to sort of show you how I would do it in the exam and how I would do it as quickly as I possibly could in terms of finding and picking out information that is relevant. Right, so I believe I've got a Kahoot to kick off, just to revise implicit and explicit. So I will unplug my headphones so you can hear the music, so I'm not just in silence. Set this up for you guys. Here we go. Right, that's your game pin How many have we got this morning? We've got 31 of you, which is lovely to see. So a few more jumping on, please. Don't feel like you have to put your own name if that's stopping you from doing it. Just make something up. Which I think most of you probably do, which is fine. Right, shall we get going? So we've got about half of you on at the moment. So I think you can jump on as we go. So I think it's the same question throughout. There's only 5 questions. So what are you explicitly told in this advert? So 50% off monthly gym membership. This music's a bit loud today. Fantastic. Excuse me. So yeah, 50% discount. Brilliant. What are you implicitly told in this advert? So cell phone radiation can cause brain cancer. Implicitly told. Oh, right. So it says using your cell phones can cause cancer. So it's explicitly telling you that. The implicit is that you should be careful when using your phone. It doesn't say it's very dangerous. It says it can. So it's not it will. So it is the explicit is you can cause cancer by using your phone in that advert. That's what it's telling you. That's explicit. The implicit is that you need to be careful because there's health risks, essentially, according to them. I'm not sure whether it's still a thing or not now. I don't know whether that's sort of been debunked. Right, so this is implicit this time. What are you implicitly told? So this is really tricky. There's barely any information on here. I think there's 2 answers for this one, but you guys can only select one, so you've got a 50-50 chance instead of a 25. Yeah, fantastic. So it's a man, and it's implying that there's a mental health condition going on. So the roller coaster ups and downs, sort of metaphorical. It's creating imagery, and it's also telling you don't know what's going on inside somebody's head because you can't see it. Fabulous. So explicit this time, what you're explicitly told by this advert. So prices that take you back. This is a Tesco advert. Explicit this time. Yesterday I rang my mum to ask her what that man was called because I couldn't remember. He's called Mr. Motivator. Yep. So Tesco's is 100 years old. It tells us it's celebrating its 100 years. That's why it's doing price drops, and it tells us that prices have been cut as well. Fantastic. Oh, I've got 1 on a 4 strike. Well done. What does this advert implicitly imply? So pan 10. Implicit this time. Oh, right. So implicit. So the model we assume is using pan 10. Yeah, she's there for a reason. She's there to show off how brilliant the product is. Pan 10, we are explicitly told uses aloe vera. So that's written down for us. We are also explicitly told that the shampoo is 30 times stronger than its competitors. That's an explicit fact we're given, and you can only buy Pantene directly from the company. It doesn't say that. And it's not implied either. Right, let's see how we did. Jania or Yania, well done. Louise and Slinky, well done. Fantastic, guys. Crucian Gang in fourth and the Beast in fifth. Lovely. Fab. Right, let's get rid of that. Lovely. Right, so I've got a Kahoot at the end, which is entirely separate and different, essentially, just because I feel like I'm asking you guys these same questions every lesson. So something which is a bit different. Right, okay. So the question then, so you need to refer to source A and source B for this question. The annoying thing is you're not told where you are referring to. So you could be potentially looking anywhere in these sources. So you usually get sources that are perhaps a page, up to a page and a half long. 19th century texts are usually really, really dense. So it's a lot of work. You've got a lot of text to go at, which I think can be really overwhelming in the exam. So both sources describe their opinions on Christmas. So what you're being asked to do is evaluate their opinions. Are they the same? Are they different? What are they explicitly telling you and what are they implicitly telling you? So use details from both sources to write a summary of what you understand about the concept of Christmas. So I think by far this is the most difficult. So what I'm going to go for today is I think I'm going to start with text B. So the slightly irritating thing is that source A isn't always the early text and source B isn't always the later text. They swap them around occasionally. I don't know why. I would prefer to always have source A as the old one, source B as the second one, and not have them swap and change, because I think it's a really easy mistake to make by writing source A when you mean source B. So be wary of that in your exams, because it does move about a little bit. Right, so this is the question. So I've got a Slido for us afterwards, which is sort of based on what you think, what the opinions are of these people. So when you go into the exam, I think you would probably be wise to read question one, what it's asking you. So you are actively reading. Question one will only be based on one of the sources, but I'd say read question one, then go on and read the entirety of the two sources. That then means that you already are starting to form ideas as you go through. You'll have little light bulb moments and you'll sort of draw things together whilst you're working, whilst you're thinking perhaps on another question, and you can quickly make a note about what you might write for another question or something that you find interesting. Yeah. So I think paper two is more difficult, and I think this question in particular is tricky because you've got the entirety of two texts to go at. You're not looking at a specific area. Right, so this extract then, taken from The Independent, written by Rachel Hosey, published in 2017, so quite recent. And this extract looks at why the British public enjoy Christmas so much. So it's not a hugely rich source. It's not really, really chunky. You will get a chunkier source in the exam, but as we're only looking at the 8 marker, I think it's absolutely fine for what we are doing today. I'll just double check the chat because I've noticed a couple of people mention stuff. Right, facts used. Yeah, absolutely. So you can be looking for deforest features if you want to. So in question 2, you don't have to talk about a load of different features. It's more about opinions and the explicit and the implicit, subjective and objective. That's what you're looking for. That's your assessment objective. You can talk about language devices, so you'll see I'll pop them in occasionally in my answers, but I don't go into a lot of detail and a lot of deep analysis. For this one, you're looking for evidence to support an opinion or an explicit piece of information or an implicit piece of information, and you're explaining and analysing what that explicit or implicit information is and why it's being used and why it's there. So a bit of a different technique as to question 3 and 4, essentially. Right, okay, let's have a read over the text. So this time I'm going to read it and I'm going to sort of highlight and make notes as I go along. So interactive reading, and I'm just I'm looking for opinions and I'm looking for any thing that I think is interesting in terms of why we're being told explicitly, how it fits in with the argument of the piece, why it's there. Right, so UK revealed as country most obsessed with Christmas. So I think this could either go one of two ways. It could be, we really need to stop being so obsessive with Christmas, or Christmas is fantastic, we should go even more mental than we already do. Well, yeah, so it's very clear that it will go one of two ways depending on the opinion of the writer. So, deck the halls and step into Christmas. Britain is officially the most festive nation in the world. So we are told explicitly we are the most festive nation in the world. Let me just plug my pad in. I think that might be a little bit easier for what I'm going to try and do today. Right, so this is what we call a superlative. So a superlative is where we say that something is the best, is the most. So generally, shorter words have est on the end of it. So prettiest, happiest. So you are the best at something. Or longer words, we have things like, for this one, most festive, which, so festive is quite a short word. So that's sort of an exception to the rule. Oh, I can't think of anything that's particularly wrong. The most obsessed is on here, the most agitated, something along those lines. So it's a superlative adjective. It's a type of adjective. So I'm going to be testing you on word classes at the end of the lesson, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We also have comparatives, so that's where we compare one thing to the other. So for that one, we say something is more something, or we put er on the end, so prettier. So Linda is prettier than Denise. I don't know why I chose those names, but there we go. So it's comparing one thing to another. Or we could say Vicki is more excited about going to Disney than her partner, which will be the case whenever we get there. Yeah. So that's adding er, comparing. The way I think for superlative is, if you are the best, you have the est on the end. Yeah. So that's my way of remembering. Right. So a study of the most Googled words from around the globe has revealed that it's Brits who are searching for the most festive terms. So here I'd probably just get my highlighter out and go, right, most Googled words, that's how they're measuring it. There's a fact there for me. That's really interesting. So that's explicit information. Move on. Right, according to Google's data, which is complete to 13th of December, this is the 4th year in a row that the UK has had its highest search interest in Christmas. So we've got another fact there again. Right, so to the lovely person who has raised your hand, can you type in the chat for me what you would like to mention? So we've got 4th year in a row there. Mostly superlative, yeah, absolutely. Fabulous. Right, okay. So far this just seems to be sort of facts gathering essentially, doesn't it? Let's move up. Be it hunting for the perfect Christmas pudding recipe or finding out where the best parties are, Brits seemingly can't get enough of the most wonderful time of the year. So I'm going to highlight Brits here. Whoops, let's get it on highlighter. So I'm highlighting that one because we've got some colloquial language there. So that means chatty language, slang. So we would say the British public seemingly, if we were going to be formal. As you'd expect, searches for festive terms grows over the course of the year, starting to drastically increase in October and peaking in December. After the UK in first place, Ireland takes second spot, followed by Slovakia, Italy, the Czech Republic and the US. So just some more facts there. Then I don't know why that's gone into a different font, but there we go. Let's just quickly check the chat. Statistics, yeah, absolutely. So the Lincolnshire village of Kelby was revealed to be the part of the UK most obsessed with Christmas, and at the other end of the scale in Burnham in Buckinghamshire, where there were festive searches 20 times less often than Kelby last year. So we've got our stats there, absolutely sorted. Right, according to consumer and retail analysis Kate Hardcastle, so I think this is really important. So we've got a direct quotation coming up, which you guys can't see yet, and what we also have is we have an expert, so that creates credibility to the article and that creates validity. So this is a trustworthy source, trustworthy article. It's the sort of thing you could go off and talk to someone and say, look, here's all the facts, and sort of not be told that you're wrong, essentially. Right, life is really tough right now and emotionally, therefore everyone is aiming towards a celebration, she explained to the BBC. Hardcastle also believes the reason Brits outdo Americans when it comes to Christmas interest is that Thanksgiving is an important holiday in the US, whereas in the UK all our attention is focused on Christmas. So we've got a little bit of context there to sort of help us understand why, because I definitely was surprised when I looked at this and I would have thought America went all out, but I was wrong. So it's nice that that's been given a dimension and sort of a reason, sort of tackling what we might think the reader would initially think. Right, and if the search data is anything to go by, Christmas really does start earlier every year. Searches for festive terms in September and October have more than doubled over the previous 7 years. So we've got some more facts there. I'm not going to bother highlighting it because we've got enough facts. Yeah, move on. But given the year we've had, perhaps we need it. So this, I think, is really important. So this, I'm rubbish at highlighting on my tablet. Right, here we go. This suggests that we're building a rapport with the audience, and we've sort of got what we would say a shared understanding. Now, I had to look this up because I couldn't think what was going on in 2017. So 2017, North Korea were looking like they might, you know, when the nuclear missiles thing was going on and things were sort of, tensions were really high and Donald Trump was being Donald Trump, and it was the year that we evoked Article 50 and started the process to leave the EU. So that's what that references to. Right, okay, so I've very quickly highlighted a few things which tell me opinion-based stuff. So although this doesn't say I think this, I think that, there's a lot of implicit of, well, we should celebrate Christmas and it's great that we are the most obsessed, and it's very, very positive. Right, now let's have a look at this one. So this was written in 1836. It was a pamphlet written by, we think, Hannah More. And it was published in the Society of Promoting Christian Knowledge. So I suppose that already tells you contextually what sort of vibe we're going to be getting from this. And she gives her opinions on what is going on at Christmas at the moment. So I will quickly show you, because I've saved it in my bookmarks, where I've got this from. So if you are interested in sort of seeing just generally, I've closed my tutor space. Right, okay, so generally, can I go back? Will it let me? It will let me. Right, fabulous. That was lucky, wasn't it? Right. Disaster averted. Fabulous. Right. So I will quickly show you what this looks like. So the British Library have loads of stuff scanned in. So if you're into history, or just generally you would like to find out a little bit more about sort of how Victorian literature was presented, they've got loads of stuff of scanned in items. And so this is the pamphlet that this came from. And this is the extract that I've taken out. So really interesting, and I think it's nice to look at sort of just how things are laid out, how things have changed. If that does interest you, I appreciate it. That is quite nerdy. But if you want to go have a look, British Library is really good. It's got loads of free resources. Newspaper archives are really good as well. But as far as I find, most of them you have to pay for a subscription, although the subscriptions are relatively cheap. So sort of do as you please really with that information if you're interested. Right, so let me just have a drink and then we will crack on. Yeah, so I understand, Emma, when you said direct address, it's more talking about we. Direct address is you, so it's talking directly to the reader and sort of singling them out. But if you say we, that sort of suggests that we're sort of all in this together. And there was a piece of literature when we looked at the fashion article a few weeks ago, the 19th century one, which was talking about having a healthy dress. That didn't really have any direct address, but there was sort of implicit that, you know, all girls should stand together. And in the fashion faux pas one, which we were comparing it with, was, oh, we've all been there, haven't we? We've all packed too many clothes, we packed stilettos, and we should have packed flats. And, you know, it's creating a, we're all in this together, all girls together vibe, and that everybody is in the same boat. It's creating shared understanding. And by creating that rapport, you are more likely to, I suppose, feel influenced by the article. It feels like you're important, essentially. Right. I don't think, oh, I have had some stuff. Rapport, sorry, with an R. I know my V's look like R's. So a rapport, if you've got a good rapport, that means you've got a good relationship with somebody, you understand each other, you listen to each other, you respect each other. Yeah. So having a good rapport generally in life is important. Right, to those of you raising your hands, I can't sort of let you come in, as it were. So I think if you raise your hand and I say, come talk to me, then you pop up. I can't do that, or at least I don't think I can. So just write your questions in. Right, let's have a read. So, there are two ways of keeping Christmas. Some seem to keep it much in the same way in which the unbelieving Jews kept their feasts in honour of the calf which they had made. So already it's sort of attacking Jews. I mean, that's the only time they mention the Jews, but even so, saying unbelieving seems really quite cruel. But anyway, it doesn't really add anything to sort of opinions of Christmas. And then we've got a quotation, and they made a calf of Horeb in those days, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. But what a sad sort of Christianity is this? I am no enemy to mirth of a proper king and at proper seasons, but the mirth I now speak of is the mirth of inconsideration and of folly. And it is often mixed with much looseness of conduct and drunkenness. Is this then the sort of mirth proper for Christianity? So we already know it's really attacking her opinions. Is very much, there's a certain way you should behave at Christmas, which we can assume links to Christianity and what Christmas actually stands for. We've got looseness and drunkenness here, which is very negative. There's loads of repetition from mirth, which I'm going to look up for you guys because I know what it means, but I don't feel like I can explain it very well. So we'll have a quick Google. So we've got a rhetorical question there. We've got lots of repetition and just generally negative language. Right, let's have a quick Google of mirth. So, mirth, so amusement, especially expressed in laughter. So she's saying you can absolutely have a good time, but only at the right time. That's what she's implying. So let us suppose now that a man was to choose a church as a place in which he was to sit and sing his jolly song. So we've got some sibilants in there, which we could comment on, but it's not too much about opinions, and to drink till he was intoxicated. Surely this would imply that he was a person of extraordinary wickedness. So wickedness, nice opinion there. going to highlight that bit. But this you will say is what nobody is so bad as to be guilty of. Well then, let us suppose that instead of choosing a church as the place, he should choose Christmas as a time for the like acts of riot and drunkenness. Methinks this must imply no small degree of the same kind of wickedness. So we've got wickedness repeated loads here, mirth repeated loads, whereas that should get drunk in a church would insult the church. So he that gets drunk at Christmas, which is a season of commemorating the birth of Christ, insults Christ and his religion. So basically getting drunk at Christmas, sort of losing why we're celebrating Christmas, using Christmas as an excuse to do whatever you want. Is it called More? More thinks that is unacceptable. We should be celebrating the birth of Christ and doing that only. Right. I know it may be said that those who take the liberties at Christmas do not mean to insult Christ and that they act from inconsideration. So she talks about inconsideration a lot. So act from inconsideration. So she implies that there might be other issues, essentially, and that they don't think about it directly, but that doesn't really matter in her point of view. That's what she's implying. To which I answer that they then are very guilty in being so inconsiderate, for I would just remark, by the way, that these people who are very inconsiderate in others, for instance, they are very inconsiderate about their pleasures, but very inconsiderate about their duty. They are often perhaps very considerate about this world, but also very inconsiderate about eternity, very considerate about themselves and very little so about other people, extremely considerate of their own side of a bargain, but as inconsiderate about the side of the other party. And when they have committed a sin, they are apt to be very considerate in finding out excuses for it, but very inconsiderate in tracing out the guilt and mischief of their wickedness. In short, then, let it be remembered that inconsideration is often neither more nor less than another word for wickedness. So wickedness is coming back here, and the inconsiderate way of spending Christmas, which has been spoken of, is only, in other words, the wicked way of spending it. So a little bit of a conclusion there at the ending. Inconsiderate and considerate, we've got juxtapositions going on. We've got oxymorons in that she's saying considerate, inconsiderate, considerate, inconsiderate, and juxtaposition in the ideas of how she's saying they are considerate and how they are inconsiderate as well. Right, okay, so let me just check the chat quickly. On Christmas, Victorian people who didn't celebrate, drunken is repeated, yeah. Right. I'm not sure if there is a tripartite in there, but if there is, that's absolutely fine. We don't really need it for this question. I've just shouted the few odd ones out. Right, so year group, what year group is this lesson for? It's targeted at GCSE, so GCSE work. So some schools start GCSE in year 9, some start them in year 10. So sort of if you are sort of year 9 to year 11, then this is for you essentially. Right, okay, so what I'd like you guys to do then is I would like you to have a go at answering this for me. So let me just share the link. Yes, I am on MyTutor for one-to-one tutoring. Hence why I've done over 350 lessons. Those are all private tutoring. Right, so there is the link to the poll. So before we actually start looking at some ideas, I wanted you guys to tell me what you think first. That's what I want. It's been a while since I've used Slido. So how are the texts similar and how are they different? So remember, we're looking at opinions, we're looking at implicit and explicit information. So if you guys want to pop stuff on there, you absolutely can. If you want to pop it on the chat or the Q&A, that's fine as well. But I think having it sort of nicely in this little slide would be nice. Yeah, so they're both focused on Christmas, different belief sets. Yeah, so I mean, we're not told in the first one whether Rachel Hosey is Christian, but there's no mention of Christianity, which it's a Christian festival essentially, and the vast majority, well, not the vast majority, there are a large number of people who celebrate Christmas who are not Christian, so it's sort of just become a holiday for a lot of people. The second one, yeah, so source A, the early one, is very negative towards Christmas. She very much believes that Christmas is a time for celebration of Christ, a celebration of Christianity, and nothing else. Whereas this one seems to be about having as much fun as you can, and it's also sort of a bit, I think, patriotic, that we are the best at being obsessed with Christmas. And that seems to be fine. I think you could quite probably easily find articles which say, I'm so fed up of people buying Christmas presents in August. I think that would be completely legitimate articles, and I'm sure they are out there. In fact, I'm pretty sure I saw some whilst I was looking for an article like this. Victorian, yet much more religious. So contextually, pretty much everyone in Victorian society went to church every Sunday. It wasn't really until the end of the Second World War numbers started to really slump. Now barely anybody goes to church. I'm a Christian and I can't remember the last time I went to church, so I'm really rubbish. So there's been sort of a decline in church attendees, and it's sort of been a problem for quite a long time now. So there's definitely that difference in terms of context. Yeah, these are really nice, guys. So formality as well, yeah, that's a really nice one. So this one is quite colloquial, quite cheery, a little bit slangy, a bit like, yeah, sort of how you talk to your mate down the pub, that sort of thing. Whereas the first one is very angry, very formal, and sort of quite typical of Victorian writing, to be written like that. Incredibly long sentences as well. Right, have we got anything else? Or negatively pensive. So pensive sort of means thoughtful. So that's really nice. Yeah, it's saying how Christmas should be celebrated and definitely how it shouldn't. It makes huge generalizations, doesn't it? There is probably a certain amount, and she's probably witnessed people being drunk at Christmas. But she hasn't actually got any evidence for it. She hasn't actually said, here's the poll I've taken, here's the amount of people I've seen. So she's sort of generalizing that a huge group of people does this, and she actually hasn't said, these are my experiences. So it's not even really anecdotal in that sense. She's not saying, this is what I witnessed. There's no sort of scientific fact or evidence behind it, whereas the first one has evidence from Google, although I think, assuming that because we're the people who Google Christmas the most, I'm a little bit skeptical as to whether that is the best measure of who is the most excited about Christmas as a nation. But I suppose there's only so much you can do, isn't there? Right. If we talk about positives and negatives, will we get full marks? Right. You will definitely get some marks. You obviously need to be providing some analysis, and if you're talking about positive and negative and you're talking about it sort of their opinions, what sort of opinions they're giving, and looking at that evidence and thinking, is it implicit, is it explicit, then that's essentially what you need. Right, let me upload my model then. Right, so I've got two responses for you today. I've got a level 3 and a level 4. So one response is, let me just quickly show you. So one response, oh, that's changed the formatting. Right, so one response is a level 4, so a full marker, and another one is level 3, so 5 to 6. I'd say it's probably more on the 5 side, I think, maybe 6 if I was feeling generous. So you have to make perceptive inferences from both texts. If you only look at one text, you're going to really struggle to get any marks. You need to use really well-suited references that focus on the points you are making, and you need to look at similarities and differences between the text. So when it says show clear similarities, you also need to show the differences essentially. So these are the 2 responses. So I'd like you guys to work out which one is the top mark and which one is the bottom. Well, not bottom, the level 3. Both of these texts share the same subject, Christmas. However, how the writers perceive Christmas and its traditions are incredibly different. Saucy takes a Christian stance, which implies that Christmas should be a time for reflection, as well as a time to celebrate the Christian faith. That should say Saucy more informs the reader of her opinion. Choose Christmas as the time for the like acts of riot and drunkenness. Such a statement informs the reader that more informs the reader, that did make sense. So the reader that of Moore's opinion that one should not act in any way they want at Christmas time, and Christmas certainly shouldn't be an excuse for these acts. Where do we get to? However, Saucy is incredibly positive and recommends Christmas as a time to celebrate. But given the year we've had, perhaps we need it. This seems to communicate to the reader that the way in which we celebrate, which has become more extravagant as the years roll by, is legitimate and acceptable. Saucy also ignores the reasons as to why we celebrate Christmas, which in a sense promotes the loss of religion that created the festival. Saucy uses a variety of evidence to support the claim that the UK is the most obsessed country when it comes to Christmas, according to Google data and according to consumer retail analyst Kate Hardcastle. By using evidence, Saucy is able to substantiate the claim and main premise for her article. These details and the use of an expert in the field provides validity and credibility to the information provided to the reader. On the contrary, Saucy only considers one person's opinion, the author, and her anecdotal observations. Although we can assume that what she is saying has come about by her observations, she could be making a huge generalisation that a large number of people partake in this activity. Although this is implied, she gives no evidence based in fact that demonstrates that this is something which has become common. So that is your first one. Response 2. Saucy talks about the need to spend Christmas respecting the tradition and faith. Those who take liberties at Christmas do not mean to insult Christ. This suggests that those who do not respect Christmas need to change their ways and be respectful of the festival. However, Saucy suggests that as the UK is the most obsessed country, something which we should be proud of, Brits seemingly can't get enough. This positive tone is carried out throughout the article, which doesn't provide any negative effects of enjoying the festive spirit. Actually say doesn't, not does. Saucy provides a single opinion, that of Hannah More, which tells us that a number of people have become riotous over the festive season, acts of riot and drunkenness. This suggests that More is becoming concerned with the public's perception of Christmas and believes that behaviour should change. On the other hand, Saucy suggests that enjoying the festive spirit is something to be proud of. Kilby was revealed to be the part of the UK most obsessed with Christmas. This shows that the importance of Christmas is in the celebration and that we should endorse such celebrations given the year we've had. So which one is the full marker? Which one is the other one? Yeah. So you are absolutely right. The first one is your level 4 full marker. Right, so what makes this a 6? I think, reading it again, I think it's more of a 6 marker than a 5. I think I was being harsh. So the reason why this makes a 6 marker is it has a really good go at analysis, but it doesn't extend it a really long way. We could squeeze more out of it, and the quotations being used are not perhaps the best quotations that could be used for the point. So although they work to an extent, there are better ones that you could have chosen. Right, where is the Kahoot? The Kahoot is coming up now, do not worry. I will quickly pop back to that slide. So we haven't got judicious references, clear references which work, but they could be better. And we're talking about the similarities and differences, but it's not really perceptive. It's clear and everything works well, it just could be taken further. Right, fabulous stuff. Okay, so now is the time for questions. Let me just double check if I've missed anything. So I think one of you guys asked for a level 3 and a level 4 to see the difference. So that is your Kahoot. Whilst I'm waiting for people to jump on, someone said, what other points can you make? So AQA, you are looking for explicit and implicit information. So you're looking for opinions, and you're looking how they're conveyed, and you're looking at how well they are conveyed. Are there any holes? Are there any flaws? So in the first one, she's got no evidence to back it up. It's just all opinion based. So that's the 19th century, whereas the 21st century one has two separate pieces of evidence: the Google searches and talking to an expert. So they're much more credible. So you could talk about something like that. Right. So before we get cracking on this Kahoot, so this is just identifying word classes. So for some of you, this might be sort of, I suppose, a little bit primary school, because this is sort of the stuff you learn at primary school, but it's something we tend to forget by the time we get to secondary, because we don't use it perhaps as much as we should do. So sort of being able to identify an adjective and a verb and an adverb, just having that extra bit of terminology in the exam and saying, this is shown by the adverb such and such when you're doing your zoom in, which is really helpful. So I thought we'd have a crack at just doing that today. And I'm interested to know sort of, this is more, some of you might find this quite straightforward, some of you might not. So first one, which word class does calm belong to? So I'm just generally interested to see sort of what level you guys are at. And then if you guys find this straightforward, then I can do some trickier sort of subcategories with you. If some of you are, if the majority of you are really struggling, then we can sort of go back to basics. Yeah, fab, calm's an adjective, a describing word. Brilliant. There's some slightly harder ones with true or false at the end. Which word class does galloping belong to? Yeah, verb. So if you can inflect it for tense, so if you can put it in past, present, present progressive, anything like that, it's a verb. Fabulous. Encouraging so far. Which word class does relentless belong to? Ooh. Google, it says adjective. That's interesting, because galloping is a movement, it's a doing word. Relentless, yeah. So relentless is an adjective, so it's describing something. But yeah, that was a slightly trickier one. I'm going to check that. So violence, what word class does that belong to? So I've chosen some words that crop up in the power and conflict poetry, I think from now on. Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, that's a tricky one as well. So violence is a concept, so that makes it a noun. And you are right, it absolutely says adjective on Google, so disorientated this time, which I'm really confused about. Fabulous. Yeah, so it's got disorientated on the end. You can change it to disorientating. So inflect it for tense. Nature this time. Right, so I've looked up gallop, which says it's a verb, or sometimes a noun, but usually a verb. Yeah, fantastic. So nature, again, a concept. So galloping, I don't really understand why it's been put as an adjective, to be honest with you. Jealousy this time, because you could change galloping to galloped, or I will gallop. So you can inflect it for tense, so I'm really confused about that. So sorry, guys. Noun, yeah, jealousy. So if you were jealous, that would be an adjective because that's a describing word, but jealousy is a concept, so it makes it a noun. Confession. Isn't galloping a thing? Yes. I think we've opened a can of worms here. I didn't choose a very good verb at all, did I? Yeah, so, right. Confession. Yeah, that's a concept, so that's a noun. Expose. It can be a noun, but it's quite rare for it to be a noun, Olivia. Yeah, I do apologise for that one. I should have double checked that one. I double checked all the other ones. So gallop can be a concept in the sense that, yeah, verb, fantastic. Gallop can be a concept in the sense that you've got under this time, that it is a type of movement essentially, and it is a concept in that term. So yeah, galloping was a really rubbish question, guys. I apologise. Should have double checked it. Fabulous. Preposition, yeah. So preposition is where we happiest is a superlative adjective. So true or false? I forgot what I was saying. So preposition refers to where something is in relation to something else. So I'm sat on a chair, for example. On is a preposition. My feet are under my desk. Fabulous. Yeah, so superlative is where you are the best at something. So happiest, EST, best. Hunger is an abstract noun. I haven't spoken about this one today. Yeah, so an abstract noun is a concept. So when I've been saying that's a concept, it's something that we can't touch, we can't physically see. Better is an example of a superlative. Yeah, false. So better is an example of a comparative. So if I said I'm better at sleeping than you are, that's a really rubbish one. I'm comparing myself to somebody else. Table is an example of a concrete noun. I think this is the last one. Yeah, true. So it's something that we can see, it's something that we can touch. That makes it concrete. Rouge and Gang coming in at third. Sage Bob, say Bob, a second. And 3 smiley faces. 14 out of 14. Well done. Fabulous stuff. Well done, guys. Super impressed. Right, I'm going to do some slightly trickier stuff with you next time then. Right. Okie doke. So, few questions then. I don't think any of you have popped any English questions up, but if you want to, how do I improve on explaining my answer and getting full marks? Right, so I'd be as in-depth as you can. So there's a variety of things that you can do. So, for example, doing your straightforward point evidence and analysis, bringing in perhaps more than one piece of evidence to back up your point, to make your point even more valid, to talk about what is being explicitly said, what is being implicitly said, why you think it's either being explicitly or implicitly said, how that is different to the other source. You could also bring in context. So you'll always have a 19th century text and you'll either have a 20th or 21st century. So there will always be a big time gap. So I've said to you guys before, go off and do a little bit of Victorian history research so you can understand generally what was going on at the time. So sort of things like women's rights was a really big thing, sort of poverty was a huge problem. I'm sure most of you will have thought, if you're doing Jekyll and Hyde or Frankenstein, or what's the other popular one? Why can't I think that off the top of my head? Anyway, if you're doing, you will be doing a 19th century text in English literature, so you'll already have some knowledge from that. So bring it over, essentially, bring your context over. Right. Christmas Carol, thank you. That's because I've got an event. If you've checked for me, that is because my status is unavailable at the moment. But I'll change it to being back up if you guys want to look at my profile. Right, best way to structure essay. So I'd use your point evidence analysis, and maybe link, some of you guys do, or seal, anything along those lines, Peter Pet or whatever, as your basis, and then build it up from there. I don't think Midsummer Night's Dream is still done, but that would be Shakespeare. Right. Okay, so there was a couple of questions then for Bola about MyTutor, so I'll quickly hand over to her. And I'll go back to the Slido. Yeah.
Hey Vicki, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I can't access the questions that are MyTutor specific because I've just rejoined. So if you just kind of say them out loud, that'd be super helpful.
Yeah, so I think there's 2. What is there chemistry today, first of all?
Unfortunately, chemistry was supposed to take place at 9:45 this morning. However, because of technical difficulties, we went in, the session was unable to go ahead. However, the session planned for this morning will be delivered tomorrow instead by a man.
Fabulous. And will MyTutor still be teaching after the 15th?
That's a very good question. Obviously, we all know that the 15th is the date that the government has given schools to reopen to certain year groups. We will still be delivering sessions, but we are going to have a reduced timetable. So we'll be operating with 1 session a day. We will give you guys a proper update via email very soon. But yes, we will be still operating, most likely after school. Again, once we choose a time, we'll let you know all the details. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. Right. Oh, and we've also got, what about A-level sessions?
So actually, we do offer some intro to A-level courses on through our small group tutorials that you can find out a bit more about on our site. In regards to actually running A-level courses on our large group tutorials, which are these sessions that you guys have joined, we are still discussing that. It's something that I'm not sure what is going to be developed anytime soon. However, we will provide you with an update, and you can find out more about our A-level courses that do happen on small group tutorials on our site.
Yeah, so I suppose that answers Pranab's question of can you send us a link to small group tutorials. So that will be coming through to you guys. Key stage 3 sessions, I'm not sure about, Bola, so perhaps you could sort of clear that one up.
Again, it's key stage 3 is very much in the same group as is a similar group as our A-level tasters. So we don't actually run any key stage 3 sessions on either group tutorials, whether it be large group or small group. However, I do believe that you can go on our site to find tutors that can help you with some key stage 3 materials that you, or sessions and lessons that you may need.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone's asked if I'm continuing. So yeah, I will still be your English tutor when we go down to 1 English lesson a week. So I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, but there's absolutely loads of us that do key stage 3 as individual tuition. I do it as individual tuition. So yeah, absolutely, there are resources out there for you. Right, okay, I think that's everything for today then. So thank you very much for coming, and thanks for asking so many questions as well. I haven't had many questions for a while, so thank you guys. So tomorrow we will be looking at Blake's London, so go have a look at his illuminations and his other work. He's absolutely fantastic. I'll see you guys all tomorrow at the same time, 11 o'clock Friday morning. If you guys are sort of thinking about MyTutor and having individual tuition, hop over onto our site, go have a look, see which tutor might fit you. And if you guys want to rewatch anything, they are all up on YouTube. So have a absolutely cracking day, and I will see you all. I'll see you all tomorrow.